Alrighty, how is everyone this fine Monday morning slash afternoon, depending on where you're at? Y'all doing good? All right, before we jump into this, because you have me for the next hour, why don't you all just kind of maybe just stretch really quick, just kind of get your wiggles out. Oh my goodness, get that blood flowing, because we are going to be doing some coding together. Before I get into my little spiel, because what we are going to be doing is doing some scratch coding, and I'm going to talk about what that is in just a minute. If you're on a computer, a laptop device, and you want to participate along with the training today, what I would recommend is go ahead and set up your screen to be kind of a split screen where you can see me maybe on the left or the right, and then on the other side of your screen, another web window that would go to the Scratch website. And to get there, you can go to the website, which is scratch.mit.edu, or you can just Google Scratch coding. If you are on an iPad or other device, or if you are unable to do that, that's okay. You can still follow along. But if you have two separate devices, even better. Maybe you could watch on one and code on the other. But do have the Scratch website up, and I will give that tour of how this will work in just a minute. So while you're doing that, I'm just going to kind of share a little bit about who I am and what we do. So my name is Stephen Tafoya. I am the Older Boys Director at the Rapid City Club for Boys. We are an after-school activity facility Monday through Friday, and we serve boys here in the area ages 6 to 17. We have during the summer typically 300 to 400 boys a day, 200 to 300-ish during the school year, depending on weather and stuff like that. But we're just a recreation facility where kids can come hang out for $12 a year. They can join in sports, hang out with different age group rooms, play video games, shoot pool, join our outdoors program. There's an education program, all sorts of different things. And then we feed these kids too. So if they're here during the day, they do get to have a snack and lunch and dinner if they're here with us through the evening. So this is a really, really cool organization that I'm so blessed to be a part of. I've been here for about 2 years. And before that, I came from public libraries. And so what I want to share there is that I was in the library system in Colorado back in 2014. And kind of what is leading into this topic of scratch coding is at the time I was the technology instructor for our district. And my goal was to basically train our staff on how to basically train other people that come in with their Kindle e-readers and tablets that they just got for Christmas. Because at that time, a lot of that was really new. And so they would come to us as the library, the resource of information to say, hey, I just got this, my kids gave me this. What the heck is it? How do I use it? And so I was that guy, but we found it was kind of important that we train our staff to be that person too, that has that knowledge to kind of guide them how to use their devices. And what happened was our director at the time, she had applied for funding to start a STEM makerspace in our library. And this was all new to me at the time. And this is why I want to share this, because before I even got into anything with coding or maker spaces and STEM, I didn't have any experience with any of it. So one day I showed up at work and on my desk was a 3D printer. And I'm like, what the heck is this thing sitting on my desk? I just didn't know what it was. And so their kind of mentality was that, you're the tech guy. We're going to kind of, put you in charge of this, see if maybe you can figure it out and, give it a go is kind of what we led to. So, and what I found from this is that I found a love for the maker and STEM movement. And so right around that time is when there was a lot of kind of, I guess, talk about computer science and coding in the world. What the education world and what the tech world was recognizing was that there are just tons of kids out there with these devices now, and they know how to use them, they know how to manipulate them, but they don't quite understand how they work, the insides of the device that they're using. So my goal was to kind of figure this out and then get into the maker space and then basically encourage kids to explore technology at a deeper level. And I think for the most part now, if you've heard of the makerspace movement or the different STEM activities, a lot of that's centered around that exploration of technology and just how the world works. And that's kind of where we're at today. But that's where I was back in 2014. Like, hey, you're the tech guy, figure this out. Cool. And what I found is I found a passion for it. And one of those things that kind of arose from that was my desire, or my desire to actually do coding. And so today we're going to kind of explore what's called the Scratch coding platform. Either in the chat or if you want to do the thumbs up. I'm just curious, have any of you done Scratch coding before? Give thumbs up or something in the chat. Kind of curious to see. Not really. No. Wow, this is perfect because this is the 101 course. Yay! So we have a lot of nevers and nos, and that's okay because that's exactly what I want to do with you today. Is I want to walk you through the very basics of why we want to teach coding and how to do it with Scratch. So yeah, I think we're good to go here. Cool. All right. So before we actually get into how this works. Maybe some of you have been to trainings before at a conference or at your school or after school organization. You've seen articles about different organizations that say, hey, we need to be teaching our kids how to code or get into computer science. Or maybe you've heard of the Hour of Code movement from code.org, a little bit about what they do. But what I want to talk about right now is why it's important that we maybe kind of engage our kids and our youth with computer science and coding. And before I kind of give some of my reasons, just in the chat box, maybe put some of your thoughts about why it's important that we teach kids how technology works, how to program a website or design an app or make an animation in code. If you guys go in the chat real quick, just kind of share what you think it might be from your perspective. So it looks like we have some people that use Scratch a lot. Kids love it. So that's one of the first things. Kids love it. Future career opportunities, that's a big one. A lot of the tech companies that are pushing the coding, they're looking at it from the careers perspective. They see that there's a lot of unfulfilled jobs right now. And so they're like, we need to train these kids, the future adults, the future workforce to work with technology. Technology is always expanding. Yeah, we got to know what we're doing. VR's coming. We have to be ready for that. Careers, give them skills they can really use. Yeah, Amanda, I really like how you said discovering their passions. I think that's a big thing in Scratch, and we're going to talk a lot about that today as well. Opening up opportunities. Yeah, so a lot of good things, and I think that's a lot of maybe what we want to see when we engage kids in coding and computer science, is that we're kind of coming at it from a lot of different angles. Like I said earlier, one of those angles is a career aspect. Like, if you learn to code, these are high-paying jobs. Like, if a kid's going into computer science and they're learning how to design apps or build websites, like that's a money-making career. But even if there's a child or kid who doesn't have an interest in that career field, coding and computer science has a lot to offer everyone, really. And so if you were to Google the benefits of coding, you'll come up with a lot of different reasons. I'm just going to point out a few of the ones that really resonate with me. We already talked about how it's kind of the new literacy, how we want kids to understand the technology that they're working with. And that's a very important thing because as we move into the future, more and more devices and technologies are going to keep coming out. And if we don't stay on top of that, we don't want to be behind the curve. We want to be masters of these things that are coming out because that's what's going to make our lives better. Whether it's social media or a coding language or whatever it might be, because that's the world we have to live in. And if we can't survive and thrive in that world, we're going to feel behind or lost or disconnected from the world around us. Another big thing is it fosters creativity. So when we talk about the Scratch platform and once we start exploring that, what you'll see is that you're going to see millions and millions of projects of just these kids, how their minds work, their passions and their desires, and how they see the world. And I think that's the cool thing about Scratch is you see a lot of creativity come out in these projects that they share with their friends on the Scratch coding platform. From an academic standpoint, one thing that the researchers are showing is that kids that learn how to code, that actually translates into their academic excellence. They see confidence boosts in students. They see them, maybe there was a math problem they were not able to tackle in one of their math classes. And then they went into their tech class and they were coding. And for whatever reason, that association of what they were doing in coding just kind of helped unlock their mind to where they're solving problems that they were struggling with before. And so they're starting to see in the brain how that those two activities are just kind of, unlocking and making things work a little bit better when it comes to academics. And again, a lot of big part of this is problem solving. So if you're thinking about how you want to make an app or a website, you actually have to think about how it's going to look, how it's going to work, all these things. It's a step-by-step process, and you're starting with nothing. So as you start with nothing to get to the full thing, you have to go step by step, and that's a problem you have to solve. And so as these kids are creating their animations and their games, they're problem solving. Scratch is a social platform, so they can actually talk to their friends and work together on projects. And so they're also building in these 21st century skills, which are so key for them to kind of develop with their peers and as they move into the professional world as they're coding within the Scratch websites and other platforms. And as somebody mentioned earlier, Scratch is fun. It's actually a blast if you do get into the coding aspect of Scratch. So now in the chat, I noticed that a lot of you said you've never done this before. And that's, I think, the first thing that happens when I'm teaching a Scratch coding class is they say, oh my gosh, Stephen, I've never done this. I'm not a coder. I didn't have a computer science background. I didn't do this for a living. And that's why I shared part of my story is I didn't do that either. Like I was the tech guy, but I wasn't the coding guy. I wasn't the 3D printer guy. But I was somebody who was willing to take a risk to try something new and to dive deep into this. So what I learned from this, just a couple of tips before we jump in, is that you don't have to have the answers to everything when it comes to this coding aspect, okay? One of the first mentalities and the first phrases I want to teach you is that you don't have to, like if a kid comes up to you and they say, okay, in Scratch, how do I do X, Y, Z? They ask you this question and it's just like, a foreign language to you, okay? You know a little bit, but you don't know the big picture of what they're trying to do. Instead of saying, I don't know, which is kind of that mentality we're trying to break from that we've kind of, grown up with, the phrase that you want to use is you would say, that's a good question. Let's find out together. Because if you can basically take their question and kind of break it down into smaller pieces, and you know how to go onto Google and take those, their question and put it into a Google search, the answers are out there. There's lots and lots of resources out there that you can find to help a student solve that problem. Or maybe it's just a peer in their class. You know that Amanda has the answer to that because you saw her do that, but Jimmy is struggling with this problem. It's just a matter of connecting that person to that person. So it's not having all the answers, but it's being able to connect them to the right solution or helping them find it together. And what this happens is you have this kind of mentality where you go from sage on the stage, okay? You're no longer the person just delivering the information and they're taking it in, but you're now their guide on the side. You're their partner in learning. And that's the important thing when you go into something like this, whether you're coding or 3D design or whatever it is, this has to be a partnership with them, okay? You're co-learning with them and you're not just leading them, okay? And if you don't know the answer, find it together. That's what's gonna help you through this as you work with your students in coding. A big part of this too is just resources. There's tons and tons of resources online. I'll share those at the end when we go into the tour of the website. Then the last thing I want to talk about is that with Scratch, whether you're in a school or after school, when it comes to coding, you might have a different approach. If there is a school that is doing computer science and coding, a lot of their kind of focus is going to be academic based. They have marks and different, minimums they want to hit and different topics they have to cover, okay? So if you're the tech educator in your school, that might be something that you'd have to explore just a little bit more. In an after school setting, it doesn't have to be as, I would say, intense as like an academic curriculum would be. In fact, what we do here when we do Scratch coding with our kids in the library or in the older boys room is that I kind of give them a theme or topic. Today we're going to create an animation about summer and whatever it might be. And maybe if they've never done it before, I might give them a quick tutorial like the one we're going to do today, or I might just walk around and help kids that have done it before and kind of guide them, ask them questions, see how they're doing, but let them be a little bit more open-ended in their creativity at an after-school facility. So I know that maybe just kind of sounds like, oh, okay, I don't really know what you're talking about right yet because I've never seen Scratch, but I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Like, this is the mentality you have to have going in. It's going to seem like a lot and it's going to seem intense, but we're going to start just the very, very basics. I'm going to give you a tour of the Scratch website, show you how the tools work, and we're just going to create a few little animations and tinker around with the project. So I'm going to switch over to my screen. And does anybody have any questions really quick before we jump in? Is everybody set up with their kind of split screen option for the ones that are coding? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay, let me get in here. Okay. Oh, somebody's in the waiting room. So many people in the waiting room today. My goodness. Okay, can everybody see my Scratch screen? All good? Good thumbs up? Yeah. Okay, cool. Sweet. So, Scratch. Scratch is a coding language or coding tool. Scratch is one of the first probably coding languages that I was introduced to when I first started getting into all the maker stuff back in 2013, 2014. And I'd probably say it's the one that I've always gravitated back towards, and for a few reasons. One, Scratch was released almost I think actually it was back about 15 years ago, back in 2000, probably about no, actually 2007 is when it was just released out of MIT. And kind of what they were looking to do was to give youth a platform where they could freely create and bring their ideas to life. And so Scratch has really become this amazing tool for creative people who like to code, for them just to share their ideas. It's an amazing, amazing platform. I was just going over their stats that they share every month about how kids use Scratch. And just in May and last month, they had 1.5 million new projects. And in the comment section, because Scratch is kind of like coding mixed with Facebook, because kids can interact and talk about each other's projects and all that stuff. They had about 5.4 million comments. So this is the place where kids come when they're doing coding and they're sharing their projects. Like, this is the site. This is where they want to be, and this is where they do it. So it's a really awesome platform. It's accessible. Like, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, you see my big arrow, my big yellow arrow. You can actually sign in and have a Scratch account, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But you can actually just start creating in Scratch. Like, you don't have to have an email or anything like that to use Scratch. And on that note, right now I'm on the website. I'm connected to the internet. But let's say you have a site that does not have internet access or limited computer technology. You can actually download a version of Scratch that is offline too. So that's really cool in terms of the accessibility, because you could go somewhere like your public library, get the Scratch program, and then install it on a device and then bring it to your site where you may not have internet and still use Scratch. So they make it really accessible for youth and for people who are educating youth with Scratch. So yeah, Scratch is really popular, very accessible. And there are other platforms out there. That's what I want to mention real quick. You're going to see as you go into this coding world that there's places like code.org, Tinker. We're going to hear from Girls Who Code in just a little bit, that have different coding curriculums. And a lot of them actually sometimes use Scratch and different tools. But Scratch is, I would think of this as more as a platform itself, like a coding tool. Whereas a lot of the other ones like code.org and some of the other places are more of the content that teaches it. So they work really well together. So it's worth looking into other coding resources that you come across as you explore the computer science and coding world. So what I want to start with right now is, if you can see my big pointer here. Do I need to make it bigger? Because I can make it really big. Let's see. I'm just being really silly right now. Okay, so we got my big arrow here. So up at the top, there's just a few things I want to point out, and I'm actually going to just kind of zoom in a little bit. At the top, there are a few menu options up here. So first of all, there's Create, and that's where we're going to come back to in just a minute. This is where I would go into the actual coding tool to start creating my project. Beyond that, though, before we come back to that, there's the Explore tool. If I click on this, this actually brings to the forefront the published projects that kids have been making. And so you can see that there's different animations, there's art, games, music. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an app or a video game. It might be a coloring contest or some project that they're tied, that's tied around a theme. And as an example, it can be relevant to the times. There's groups of scratchers who are posting projects because they are passionate about the movement with Black Lives Matter. They're making their projects about their viewpoints on that. And they can share things that are socially, relevant to them. They can be silly, they can be serious, they can be whatever. And so this is a great place to start exploring and seeing what kids are making. I mean, there's things based on books, a lot of games, animations. It's crazy. You'll find so much here. You won't even know what to do with yourself. Next part up here is the Ideas tab. So if you come back to this, if you decide after this tutorial, you're like, okay, great. I'm kind of excited about Scratch. I want to learn more. The Ideas tab is probably your next step because this is where you're going to find tutorials, those self-guided tutorials. And so you can just go from the very get-go, hit try it. Or if you want to do a very specific tutorial, learn how to animate a name, imagine a world, make a cat fly, figure out how to make music in Scratch. There's all sorts of activities here that can get you started with Scratch. And so this would be my recommendation for a next step. Like, I'm not going to give you a ton of resources because the resources are right here on this website under the Ideas tab. This is a great place for you to go to train yourself, okay, beyond what we do today. Now, this is also a great place to sit down a kid who is new to Scratch, or maybe maybe you're looking to give them a tutorial, but you don't want to kind of do it the way I'm going to do it. Like, you want to give them a project, which I highly recommend, is to give them a project to do or create based on their interests. Use this Ideas tab as a way to find a project and load this up on their screens, their iPads or their computers, because what they will do is they'll kind of walk through the video as they're doing it. And then you can kind of be there to float around and help them if they get stuck, because they even get stuck when there's the tutorial. Even though it shows all the steps and everything, they're still going to see something that they don't understand. But you can be there to kind of guide them through those steps, okay? The About tab just tells you a little bit more about Scratch. I'm going to go back to the main homepage really quick. On the main homepage itself, you can see there's kind of their main heading about creating stories, games, and everything. They will feature projects. So there's kind of like the popular section of things that are being, trending right now. There's things on Juneteenth, different animations. So if you're ever looking for ideas of what people or what kids are posting, this is a great place to find them in the featured projects. There's a category called Featured Studios. And real quick, just what studios are. These are kind of like themed collections of projects. So let's say I'm interested in dinosaurs. I can do a search for dinosaurs, and what I will find is I will find projects on dinosaurs, like individual projects. But I can actually find collections of people who have like dinosaur themed either challenges or contests. And under each one, you're actually going to find a kind of a curated resource of different Scratch projects that people have contributed to this particular theme. And so this really brings together that collaboration and that social piece that is Scratch. And so this is a really cool way to kind of, get kids engaged and, bring out ideas and, whatever they're passionate about when they start exploring Scratch. So then you'll see, you scroll down, there's just lots and lots of more stuff like that. But what I want to do now is I actually want to dive into the basics of how Scratch is used. So we're going to go back up to the top, and right next to the Scratch logo is the Create button. So if you are following along and playing here, I would like you to create that. Excuse me, click that so we can create our first project. Oh my gosh, I'm losing my words today. Okay, so what you see on your screen right now is basically kind of a blank canvas for your Scratch project. Now, typically, if I'm not logged in or if I've been to, this is my first time to Scratch, Scratch kind of handily, puts up the tutorial window. And so right now, I'm just going to close that. But if you want to start with the tutorial right away, it's right there for the most part. But if you do not see the tutorial right there and you want to kind of pop it up into your, what you're doing right now, up at the top, there is the little light bulb where you will see tutorials, and that will pop up. with different projects like I showed you earlier to get you started. Today, though, I'm going to have you kind of follow along with me. This is kind of the way I like to teach Scratch because it's a little bit more in depth than what you'll see on the online projects. So at the top are just some menu options, which we'll come back to in just a minute. But up in the upper left-hand corner where the big yellow hand is we kind of have 3 different tabs. And the first one I want to talk about is code, okay? So with code, when I talk to kids about, coding, and this is the first time they've done it, I always ask them, I go, what is coding? And so a lot of different responses is like, well, you build an app or you create a website with code. I'm like, okay, well, great. So what does that mean? Like if I were to go in and code a video game, like what do I have to do to make that video game come to life? Okay. Then we start thinking about it. We might take an example of a game like Super Mario Brothers or Flappy Bird or something like that. And they'll start coming out with different ideas. Well, you have to create characters. Yep, you do have to create characters. Rules. We have to have rules about how the game works. Yep. There might be a background. There might be sound. So they'll start throwing out different aspects of the game. And that's kind of the point to get them towards, is that coding is basically designing a project in a very sequential, very systematic way. It's a step-by-step process. And that's kind of what I lead them towards, is that as we build this, we're going to build this piece by piece. So I go, if you've ever played with Legos, which I'm sure everyone's played with Legos or building blocks of some kind, if you're going to build a house, at the very bottom, you're going to have a base, you're going to have a foundation, and you're going to have your first 2 to 4 bricks. And Scratch works much the same way. You're going to connect these blocks. You can see these colored blocks over here. These are your coding blocks. And so what's really cool about this coding platform is I'm not having to type and learn a bunch of coding jargon. I have Lego colored style blocks that I get to snap together like Legos. Scratch kind of did that strategically because they've worked with the Lego group for years and years, but they basically took a format that kids are familiar with and put it into coding. So you will see here colored blocks that go for different categories. So there's things like motion and looks and sounds, events, controls. Now, we're not going to dip into all of these, but we will use some of these as we get started. Let me zoom back out. And so that's where you would find all your code blocks. In the middle here, this is where you're going to put all your blocks. So this is kind of like your base plate for your Legos, okay, your coding Legos. This is where you're going to build your project, and you're going to connect all those blocks together, okay? On the right-hand side, I'm going to have to minimize that window. There we go. There is this window here, which is the stage. So you can see this is the cat. This is the Scratch cat. And so this is kind of like the Scratch mascot. And what they do is they always put the cat in there. And after a while, kids get kind of annoyed that the cat's in their new project. And they're like, I'm going to kill the cat. And they, get rid of it right away, or they torment it once they figure out kind of what to do. But we're going to use the cat here in just a second to play with and tinker with our code. But basically anything that happens on your coding area where you put your blocks, it will come to life on the stage. This is where the play happens. This is where you see the story. This is all the behind the scenes stuff where, all the magic, the technical magic happens. And then this is the visual magic, okay? Down below are some kind of like little, what I call the costume areas or the sprite areas. This is where we will have our different characters, where we'll add different backdrops over on the right-hand side, and we'll explore more of those in just a minute. But I actually want to get started with the coding. And so what I want to do is we're going to take this cat, and we are going to make this cat walk, okay? So if you are playing along, what I would like you to do is to look over on the left-hand side at the different coding blocks. Now you'll see under motion, there is a block, the very first one, it says move 10 steps. I want you to drag this block out that says move 10 steps. So typically when you want to start a Scratch project, there is a kind of a stop sign and a green flag. Now, the green flag is going to be your, ready, set, go. Your project's going to get going. So if I click on this right now, I would hope that my cat would take 10 steps. Unfortunately, that is not the case right now, but I do have this block that says move 10 steps. Now, if you kind of look very closely, you'll see that there are these little, little divots. There's a little notch right there, and then there's like this little dip right here at the very top. In order for your code to work, there are these blocks that are called event blocks, okay? In order to start your event or your play or your animation, you have to have one of these event blocks. And so kind of what these event blocks look like is they look like a sideways ball cap. And that's actually how a lot of educators talk about it. This is your ball cap. If you don't have one of these ball cap, these starter top blocks, your code will not work. So the most common one when you look at projects and getting started is the when green flag clicked, okay? Now, the first thing you'll notice is that we're also stacking from top to bottom and not going left to right. So when I bring these together, they actually snap magnetically really nice. It's kind of cool like that. But when I put them together and then I click my green flag, let's see what our cat does. Go ahead and click your green flag if you're doing it along with me. You can see the cat is taking 10 very boring steps. Now you'll see that he's not like animated or moving his legs or anything like that. Like that's stuff that will come later. But in theory, in Scratch coding world, he's actually taking 10 Scratch steps, okay? Now that's okay and fine, and we can do this for a while, but the kids are gonna get bored with that. So I'm gonna move my cat back, and then we're gonna make it a little bit more automated. You know, I don't wanna have to click this every time to get my cat to the end of the stage, okay? So there are some more options or controls, and under the control panel, there's this other block that is the repeat block. Okay, and I want you to grab this one that says repeat. It's right under weight in the control category. Now this block looks like a mouth. Okay, I like to think of this as like an alligator mouth that likes to eat other blocks. So before we can use this block, what I will do is I'm going to break off this move 10 steps block, and I'm going to stick it inside the mouth of that repeat alligator block. Now, what we have here is we have a multiplication equation here, and it's a great time to kind of bring in some math if you'd like, because what's going to happen is no longer is my cat just going to move 10 steps. My cat's going to move 10 steps 10 times. And you can ask your students, all right, what's 10 times 10? 100. Hopefully they say 100. If they say anything else, you know, go back to that. Just say, move on. But it's 10 times 10. So if I click on this now, my cat actually moved how many steps? 100. So he moved to the end a lot faster. Now, if I wanted to move him further, I might increase, hold on. I might increase my number to 20 because he didn't get quite to the end once I dragged him back. So if I click the green flag and I go 20 times 10, how much is that? Okay. And it moves it to the end. And that was kind of my main goal, is to kind of get the cat to the end without having to click the green flag a million times. So that's great, but again, kind of boring. So we're going to move on from that. So we have these control blocks that allow us to automate things and make things a little bit more, automatic without having to click things. What's even better than the repeat block sometimes is this other block under the control category. So same category, the forever block. Now, you don't have to answer out loud in the chat, but if I put the move 10 steps inside of the mouth of the forever block, how long do you think this cat's gonna walk for? The answer should be forever. And that's what the kids say. They get so excited. He's gonna walk forever and then we're not gonna see him again. He's just gonna walk off the stage. You know, they make a big dramatic deal about it. And that's fine because you gotta be silly with Scratch. So if I click the green flag, my cat goes on forever, and really not forever, because on this right-hand side, there's actually kind of a wall that your sprite or your character will run into. And so it kind of just gets stuck there. Now it's still walking, it's still trying to move, but it's stuck there on the right-hand side. And so until I hit stop, my cat's gonna keep trying to walk, and I have to bring it back. Now it's kind of annoying to bring it back on its own. Like I can drag this a million times and do that. But what I want my cat to do is I want my cat to start in the middle every time without me having to drag it back from the right-hand side. So we're gonna go back to our blue motion category. And the fifth block down, there is one that says go to X and Y. Now, if you have nightmares about geometry class, this is where we bring in some of that X and Y plane that we all so much loved back in the day. And one thing you need to know about Scratch is that basically this Scratch stage works on an X and Y grid. And I'm going to show you kind of how that looks just a second. Let me pull it up really quick. Maybe. Okay. So I'm going to come back to the background thing in just a minute. I know I went really fast, but I want to show you this. So in Scratch, when we talk about those 10 steps that the cat moved, it is 10 basically kind of increments from a X and Y standard. So basically, if I move 10 steps, I'm moving from point 0, 0 to point 10, 10, 0, basically. So it's kind of moving along that timeline of the X and Y grid, okay? And so that's kind of what you have to think about in the invisible realm of what is behind Scratch. So when the cat goes on forever and hits the wall, he's basically just kind of hitting that X 240 on the X and Y plane. Or if it goes backwards, it's a negative 240. So if you have middle schoolers that are doing this and they are learning their coordinates, this is a great tool to bring into their learning, because you can kind of play around with their animations and their characters as it relates to the X and Y grid. So with our cat, what was I doing? Okay, I want to bring it back to the middle. And so I can actually tell my cat at the start of my code so if you have this connected, I'm connect your forever block. I want it to start, the first thing I want it to do is to start at 0, 0, which is right in the center. So I want this to be the first thing that is connected to when green flag clicked, because once I click the green flag, step 2 is putting the cat at 0, 0. And then my next step is to make that cat run into the wall. So I click on that, I put it all together, I click on the green flag, and now my cat moves there. But now, if I click the green flag again, every time is always going to do that first step of putting our cat at 0, 0, therefore putting it back without me having to drag it. Okay, so all great and dandy. We got some of the basics down. Still kind of boring, so let's be a little bit silly now. Okay, we're gonna add another piece of block to our code right here. That's gonna make our cat do something kind of silly, and this is what gets the kids kind of excited. Okay, under the motion category, we're gonna kind of scroll down a little bit, down towards the bottom. There is this block that says if on edge, bounce. So I'll always ask the kid, I go, kids, what do you guys think will happen if I stick this block that says if on edge, bounce? This is what I tell them. I go, this is a rule. This is a rule that's going to happen when we start our code over. Okay, what do you think is going to happen? And then I'll listen to their answers. I'm not going to tell them, but I'll say put that block in there and click the green flag, and let's see what happens. Let's see if you were right. Okay, so go ahead and do that if you're following along. And now you can see, oh my gosh, this cat's now no longer just running into the wall. He's hitting the wall or hitting the edge and then bouncing back. So he's going back into the other wall and then back the other way. And so now you have this cat doing some kind of silly, right side up and then upside down. And then it's gotten a little bit goofy now, okay? So now we're having a little bit more fun with our code. So we have our cat, it's moving, it's bouncing from left to right. And one thing I like to do here, if I'm teaching this way with kids, is I like to say, okay, now our cat has been walking and bouncing off the walls for a while. And I might say, oh my gosh, how many of you guys have just ran in circles or ran from one end of the room to the other and then ran back? I go, what happens if you spin around like that or run a lot? And they say, oh, you become dizzy. I go, you know what? Our cat's getting a little bit dizzy. In fact, our cat's looking a little green, or it's gonna look a little green in just a second. So one thing that you can do with your characters or your sprites is you can actually modify the ones that they give you. And so over here in the upper left-hand corner where our code was, right next to it is a tab called costumes. Now this is pretty cool because this is where kids really like to get, they get excited because they're like, oh, I get to like make my own drawings? I can modify the color of my cat? Yeah, this is probably maybe the funnest part of Scratch actually, because a lot of kids are familiar with drawing. They like to draw, they like to color. This is a familiar thing for them, whereas coding might be new. This is what they know. So first thing I want you to do is if you're following along under the costumes tab, is go over to the fill, and we're gonna make our cat green, or you can pick another color, but I'm gonna make mine green because my cat's getting sick. And then I'm going to come over here. There's different tools for drawing lines and shapes and paint brushes. But go ahead and grab that paint bucket tool. And then come over here to your cat. And you can see already, if I click on it, I can make my cat nice and green. Nice and pukey, cat. So the cat goes back and forth, getting a little sick right there. Whoo, getting a little nauseous going back and forth, hitting that wall. Crazy cat. Okay, now just to be fun, what I might tell the kids is, this cat's going kind of slow. I go, how would we make the cat faster? Looking at our code, what can we change in our code to make our cat go faster? And hopefully if they answer, what we're looking to guide them towards is we want to increase the number of steps that the cat takes. So I go, and if they don't answer, I might say, do you think if we change the number for the move number of steps, that'll help? Yeah. Should we make the number smaller or should we make it bigger? And then they'll say bigger. And I go, okay, what number? They'll say 2 million, but you don't want to do 2 million because that's just chaos. But, maybe 200, 300, something like that. So if we increase the number and we do that, oh my goodness, my cat's going crazy. He is definitely going to leave a hairball on my carpet. So then I let them kind of just tinker around with changing the colors, moving the number of steps, stuff along those lines. So it just becomes a little bit silly at this point, tinkering around with our cats. Let me bring it back really quick. Okay. So how am I doing on time? Not too bad. Okay, so now we're gonna add a little bit more code to our cat. We're gonna make it sillier. I don't want to stop and just be all boring right now. Let's make it sillier. So we made our cat green. Let's make it change colors as it's walking around. Okay, so now we're gonna go into a new category. So on the left-hand side, under the motion category, is the looks category. This purple. And down, if you scroll down, probably about halfway, there's this wonderful block that says change color effect by 25. So this block, I would like you to stick inside the giant mouth of forever. So just so you know, those crocodile mouths, they can expand as big as you want. They have a big hungry stomach and you can stick as many blocks. They'll eat it whatever you put in their mouth, okay? So now we have this code that says when the green flag's clicked, my cat will go to 0, 0 right in the middle. And then after that, forever, unless I hit the stop sign, my cat's gonna move 10 steps. If it hits an edge, it's gonna bounce back, and it's gonna continuously change color by 25, which is just a way of, how fast the color is changing. I'm not gonna, go too deep into that, but if I change it to 10, it might change a little bit slower. If I change it to 250, the color is gonna change dramatically. But I'll go, hey, let's see what the code does. So they have them click the green flag. And now we have this neon flashing cat just bouncing back and forth. So it's at a disco party or something. I don't know what's going on, but we got that crazy cat changing colors, no longer green, but having a little dance party, I guess. So yeah, so that's kind of what some of the looks categories do. You can do different things by like changing size and different things. There's way too many blocks to explore like in a beginner session like this, but it's worth going back and putting blocks in. One of the things I want to point out really quick is that Scratch is a very fail-safe environment. You can make mistakes because you can throw away your mistakes. You can undo. You can get rid of blocks that you didn't want. It's like if I didn't want this block, I can just get rid of it, throw it back over in the block pile over here. And I saw it didn't work, so why would I keep it? And I would take, if you see a kid getting frustrated, like, oh, I can't get my cat to bounce, help them, guide them, and show them where these blocks are. They're like, oh, I tried to move it faster, but I couldn't figure out where that block was. Like, hey, that's okay. Let me see what you tried. Let me see what you did. Oh, the reason it didn't work is because you didn't increase the number, or whatever it is. But let them know, like, hey, just try lots of different things because you're not going to ruin your project. You're just going to make it better. You can get rid of the things that don't work and bring in the things that do. That's a really, really cool part of Scratch is that you just have this platform where you can make tons and tons of mistakes. So that being said, we have a cat that is now bouncing back and forth in color and having a little dance party. Now, I don't like this grid anymore. We need to make it a little bit more lively. So if you are following along, you saw that we went from a white background to this grid, but there are more backgrounds. So in the bottom right-hand corner, there is this little circle that says choose a backdrop. Now, what'll happen as your hand hovers over the dot is all these other options will show up. The one I want you to click is actually the big dot. And so under the big dot are where you're gonna find kind of the preloaded Scratch backdrops. And so what I want you to do is just pick one if you are following along and playing along today. I'm going to choose, oh, I don't know. I guess I will just choose the beach in Malibu. Why not? So now my cat's running around upside down or whatever it is, back and forth on the beach. So yeah, I mean, trying to social distance, or I don't know what's going on. But this cat's doing this. It's silly. It's okay. Now, if you're curious why the cat's upside down, really quick, by default, in the lower right-hand corner where we have our I'm losing my words. We have our Scratch cat sprite. There's this menu option called direction. So the direction, I guess, mode, I would say, is set to rotation style. So when it goes on the negative, or when it goes back on the x-axis in the negative direction, it will actually rotate or flip based on this rule right here. if I don't want my cat to flip around, I can go to the middle, which gives me kind of a left-right that looks more natural. So if you don't like the cat upside down, the kids are going to say, why is my cat upside down when it goes back to the left side of the screen? It's because of this rule that says it's rotating. So you'd actually come over here to direction and click on that to bring it back. And you can see your cat's going back and forth right now. Okay. So real quick, I'm going to pause right there. Hey, Tia, how are we doing? Are you there? I know we got about 10 minutes left, or 13 minutes.
Yep. Sorry, I was muted.
That's okay. Are you seeing any questions? I brought up my chat. Sorry.
There's actually one question.
Okay.
From Elaine at Harmonium, and she's
Sure.
asking, does it always have to be a cat?
Oh, you know what? I'm so glad we had this question right now, because the next thing I want to do is bring in another character. So, like I said earlier, when you start the Scratch project, the cat is kind of the default, and the kids will get tired of the cat after a while. They're like, okay, great, I'm sick of the cat, and they'll torment it in different ways, or they'll delete it. But if you don't want the cat from the get-go, if you look down here in the lower right-hand corner, you will see there is a little kind of a trash can above the sprite, and so that will allow me to actually delete the sprite that is there, so I can start with a blank screen. So if you want to start with the kind of a blank canvas, that's where you would start, is deleting that. For this tutorial, I'm going to keep the cat because I actually want to bring in a second character. Before that, we brought in a backdrop to make it a little bit more fun in the background, a little bit more playful. On the left-hand side of that is another dot that says choose a sprite. So again, there's different options where you can upload your own sprites from internet, images you find online, paint your own, design your own. But what we want to do is we want to actually click the big circle. And this will actually bring us into a bunch of collection of sprites that Scratch provides. So these characters and different things, you don't have to create yourself because Scratch gives you a ton of them. And in this case, what I'm going to do, if you would do this too, we're going to scroll down. What's kind of cool is it categorizes the different kinds of sprites they have. So if you're just looking for food, or if you're just looking for music-related things, fantasy-based, people-based, or whatever it might be, you can actually go to those categories, or you can do a search. And what I'm doing is I'm going to actually just look for a dog. Talking about cats and dogs here. And I'm going to grab dog one, and I would encourage you to grab dog one as well. I'm going to put dog one over here to start our code. Now, the first thing I want to point out is in the lower right-hand corner, you will now see that we have an icon for our Scratch cat, and we have an icon for our Scratch dog, okay? Now, in the middle of the screen right here, when I click on the Scratch cat, you will see there is all that code, not a ton of code, but there is that code that we used to make our cat move, right? But when I click on the dog, you will see that this is now blank. And the reason for that is because the code that we put in were just the rules, or just the instructions for the cat. So if I want my dog to do something, I actually have to come over here, click on my dog, and start from the drawing board, basically, to make my dog do different things. And the thing I want my dog to do is I'm going to have my dog bark every time the cat passes by and touches it, okay? So in order to do that, we're going to go back to the events category. We're going to grab that one that says when green flag clicked, so that when we start this particular Scratch project, when I click the green flag, not only is the cat going to move with all of its rules and all of its instructions, the dog at the very same time, once I click that green flag, is going to do the things that we tell it to. So what I want to do is I want to, let's see, okay. Excuse me, I'm going to go back up to control. There we are. Okay. So in the control category, where we had the forever block and the repeat block, there's one more block I want to talk about. And this is the if-then block, okay? So this, again, looks like one of those alligators that likes to, eat lots and lots of blocks. And this one is another kind of rule or condition that we can set up with our game, okay? And basically it says, if a certain condition is met, then something else will happen, okay? And the way that kind of reads is basically if, and then there's kind of like this little hexagon in the middle. We'll have the if condition in the middle. And if that condition is met, then whatever happens is going to be inside the mouth of the alligator here. So let me show you what that looks like. So we said we want the dog to bark every time it's touched by the cat. So now we're going to go to the light blue category called sensing. Now, sensing has some different shaped blocks than the other ones that we have actually done before. So the one I want you to grab is the one that's at top that says touching. And what you'll see is it says touching mouse pointer, okay? So the mouse, this block right here, actually kind of looks like the piece right here. I know it's not the same size, but you will see that it kind of lights up when I bring it up to the top of that hexagon shape, the hole. And this is the one I want to actually stick in that hole right there, okay? So now we're talking about shapes and holes like back in kindergarten. The square peg goes into the square hole, okay? So what you'll see is we have this rule that says when the green flag's clicked, if the dog is touching, and I don't want it to be the mouse pointer, so you can see there's like this little drag down or pop down menu. I want it to touch the cat, which you'll see down here in the lower right hand corner. My cat's actually not named cat 1. It's named Sprite 1 by default. I can rename that if I want. I can click on my cat and actually name it cat 1 or just cat. And that makes it a little bit easier to read. But once I go back to my dog and I go over here, I want to change it from mouse pointer to cat or Sprite 1, okay? So the rule now reads, when green flag clicked, if I am touching the cat, then this is the next thing that's going to happen. So in the sound category, and this is going to be our last piece of code before we kind of wrap it up, we are going to go over to sound. And now what you're going to see is these purple blocks that say play sound dog 1 until done, or start sound dog 1. So I showed you kind of the two of the tabs. That we showed you the code tab where all our code blocks are. I showed you the costume tab where you can modify the colors of your cat and your dog and your different sprites. But under the sound tab, some of these sprites have built-in sounds, or if they don't have built-in sounds, there's a whole library of different sounds that you can build into your project. By default, the dog has barking sound. So because that sound's built in, what I want to happen is I want the dog to bark every time the cat is touching the dog. So we're going to test this out. I click the green flag, the cat goes, and oh no, the dog did not bark. And I might ask my students why, and there is a reason why. They may not know this answer, but I do want to explain it. The thing that happens here is that once I click the green flag, as you saw with the cat, once I click the green flag, when it starts to move, it does those things automatically. It does it really fast, and it loops it over and over and over again. And it happens within a fraction of a second. So when I look at my code that says, you know, if touching the cat, and it's looking for that condition, it's looking for that rule. If I am touching the cat, if I'm looking for this condition, the cat touches me, I'm going to bark. But what happens is this only happens once in that first fraction of a second when I click the green flag. So it only looks for that rule that one time. So I go over here to my control category, and I go, guys, we want to look for this rule the whole time that the cat's going back and forth, maybe forever. Which block do we need? Oh, we need the forever block. So we stick the forever block. Now this is where it gets tricky, okay? Because you have to kind of nest these or snap these together the right way. I will put the forever block below it, and I might actually pull off my my if rule block, and I will slide it inside the mouth of forever. If you don't do it the right way, it won't work. Forever has to be eating the other rule that says if touching the cat, the dog will bark, okay? So basically now when I put this back on my code, whoops, you have to grab it the right way too from the top. Now when I click the green flag, the code is gonna look forever. The whole time that this animation is playing, it's gonna look for that cat. It's gonna look for the cat running into it, touching it, walking by it. And once it touches, it should bark. So now if you're following along and you're doing this, go ahead and click the green flag. Okay, stops barking, barking. Okay. And so now what we've done is not only have we brought in two different characters into our story now, because we do kind of have a story now, but we have interaction between the code. And that is just the start of the kind of the coding experience. So I know that is a lot. Like when you first get started, it's intense. And that's why I asked for an hour to kind of go over some of the basics. And that's just kind of scratching the surface. Get it? Scratching. Just scratching the surface of what you can do in Scratch. But what I want to recommend that you do, if you are curious about learning more, look for online trainings. There are tons of different groups that do trainings on Scratch. go to those tutorials on the website. At the very top, again, that's our ideas page where you can get different ideas and try the tutorials. Actually, down at the bottom of the page too, at the very, very bottom, you know how websites have kind of those like little tiny menus like about us, contact, work for us. There's a link that says educators. So to go even deeper into educator resources, you can click on the educators link down at the bottom, and that will lead you to additional educator-based resources as it relates to Scratch and Scratch coding. So I'm going to stop talking right there. I could keep coding, and I probably have like another hour or
Stephen,
so.
we do have a very brave volunteer.
Oh yes, yes.
Pablo from Milwaukee would like to share his screen and share with us what he created. So, yes. Pablo, are you able to do that on your own, or do we need to give you permission?
I think I should be able to do it on my own.
Okay.
But, all right, Pablo, let's see it, man.
Awesome, yeah. So actually, when I was in high school, they taught me how to do a little bit of Scratch my junior year. So I did a little something. It's been a while, but let me see. Oh, actually, yeah, I need you guys to give me permission to share screen.
Sounds good, Pablo. We'll do that right now.
Thank you, Alicia.
All right, Pablo, you should be good.
Cool. Awesome.
That's awesome. Very cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, cool. So yeah, that's what I did.
Sweet, man. That's awesome.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Pablo. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, yeah.
And real quick, that's what I actually like to do when we do a project. I'll get the kids connected, like once we're done, if you have time at the end of the day to connect it to a TV, or even if you just have them kind of set up their stations at their laptops where kids can walk around, like have them share, let the other kids see, because they're going to find it, you know, new ideas. They're going to find, you know, funny. They're going to have a great time just interacting in that way. Did somebody else have a screen share, T? I thought I saw somebody.
Whoa.
What are we gonna do?
That's great.
Very cool. Nice job, Anjali. I don't know. She's like, I don't know. What are we gonna do? I think that's kids these days. What are we gonna do? I don't know. Actually, that's probably most marriages. What do you want to do? What do you want to eat tonight? I don't know. Very nice. Awesome.
Thank you for sharing. Stephen, thank you so much for being here.